some quick announcements before we move on to our guest speaker here. So first of all, welcome to the group. This is the Santa Clara Internet Marketers Group. We've been meeting for about 6-7 years, so we've been around for a while, and it's a very casual type atmosphere. So on the normal meetings that we have, what we will try to do is have a subject matter that we're going to speak on. If you sign up for the meetup group, you can go to scvinternetmarketers.com/meetup, and it'll redirect you to the meetup.com page directly for us. It's free to sign up, but it'll give you a notification ability for usually about a week before or a few days before the meetup. I'll have an email go out just to remind everybody that we're having the meetup, plus potentially what the subject matter will be for the night. Throughout the evening, under normal meetings, what we'll have, and the reason why I'm saying normal meetings is because we have a guest speaker, and I don't want to have it interfere too much, but it seems like Mike's presentation is going to be a little more interactive as well, so that's kind of a good thing. But typically, our meetups are subject-based, and then you can just always ask any questions along the way. We encourage questions as much as possible because we need to know what you guys are interested in knowing, and that way we can make sure we're guiding the right information. Also, in a normal group setting that we have usually about 1/3 brand new to the internet marketing world. Another third is usually intermediate, where they're getting started, and the last third is usually advanced. And I think tonight we'll probably have about the same type of mixture. We usually have about 12 to 15 people that show up, and then on heavier times of the year, it can go up to about 20 on average, depending what we're talking about, what subject matters that we're having. I also want to make note that next month there's a 50-50 chance we're going to meet. I'm not totally sure. December's usually tough to get the room if they have it planned out for retail because of the Christmas season coming up. I am told they're not totally sure yet, and the store manager's not here tonight for me to ask. So I'm going to ask him, probably email him tomorrow and then find out the possibilities. So check the website at themeetup.com or sign up for the emails to make sure that we're going to be having it or not on that. If anything, if you'd like, if you don't want to sign up for the group, that's fine too. You can take one of these cards here, and it has the Gmail address that you can email me at. Email me early and email me often, because I do not reply to emails very well. I'm just notorious for that. But if you email me, the secret usually is, if you put in the subject line, second attempt reaching you, then the guilt kind of kicks in and I'll email right away. Usually what happens is I see the email on my phone and I always say, I'm going to go ahead and sit down on my computer and email back, and then I forget. So it's not because I don't care. It's usually because I'm usually not at a computer as often to do emails. But if I know and I see that second notice, I will make triple the effort that when I sit down on my computer, I'll go ahead and email you. So you can take one of these cards to go ahead and have that question. The other thing is, Barnes & Noble's asked for us to do some kind of at least product promotion a little so that they can get some benefit out of it. Yeah, so they do allow or want us to go ahead and buy stuff from their cafe, and they don't mind you drinking in the room here. Just make sure to toss your things out before you leave. I usually will give a book promotion as well. I went to the shelf because I'm doing a lot of audiobooks, and the last audiobook I went through was John D. Rockefeller's biography. It was a 36-hour, maybe even longer audiobook, and I don't recommend anybody try to push their way through that. But I do want to say that it is a fantastic audiobook, and it does give a lot of insight of how one of the richest men in the world that ever lived made his fortune, and he wasn't an MBA grad of any sort on that type of level. He actually just persevered to really. Now, don't get me wrong, the guy was a genius. I mean, he didn't make his money because he was just lucky. He really knew how to make things work and put it together. So another great businessman that I've actually read through is from 50 Cent. I read this book a couple of years back, and it was just about the end of the year, so I made a commitment for the following year up. After reading this book, it's all about being fearless. How many of you do not know who 50 Cent is? Okay, I did not know who he was when I read this book. It was recommended. I still to this day have never heard one of his songs. I don't listen to rap at all, but it blew me away to actually understand. I don't know how many of you don't or do know this, but he was shot and should not be walking. And because of that incident, it taught him that Life is short. You better do everything you possibly can. And this book, considering it comes from a rapper, is really a great business, but because he is a great businessman as well. The company Vitamin Water, I guess he's one of the co-founders of that. He helped get it out there and launched it, and that's a multi-million-dollar business as well. And also his record label, how he created that after he got shot and then they let him go, how he decided to go ahead and start his own because he knew enough. But some of the marketing concepts that he used behind it as well is fantastic. So this book is a lot thicker than I remember. I don't know if there's added more since I read it because it was a few years back. But I highly recommend reading The 50th Law by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. It's a pretty amazing book story as far as, and a business book as well. So this is my push for the book this year. Actually, this is one, the reason I picked it up is because I'm going to reread it. I've made a commitment to kind of do the Fearless Law thing and totally forgot. But just seeing the book got me really remotivated to do it again too. Does anybody have any questions?
How many people know Robert Greene?
Oh yes. I forgot about. No, he's actually a super. I forgot what other books. I forgot what else he wrote. Does anybody else know what Robert Greene wrote? I have another one of his books that I can't remember. I mean, yeah. But I think it's more 50 Cent story. That's actually the compelling part of this book. But again, I highly recommend actually reading that book if you ever get a chance to read it. It was recommended to me, and I don't regret going to. And like I said, I'm going to probably reread it this year. So, $22.99. So, you know what? Actually, I like this book so much. If we do meet next month, I will probably be giving away a couple copies of this, because I think it will impact people's lives enough. And we'll do some kind of drawing if we have it next month. If not, I'll do it in January if that comes around to do it. But yeah, I want to grab a couple of these copies. I think I have a couple copies of other books at home too. So Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad is another book that really changed my life. And I have about 4 copies at home. I forgot to bring them. Totally forgot about doing a giveaway. I thought I was going to be doing it in December. Marja, I mentioned we might not be meeting next month because they might be using the room. But I'll be sending out emails and I'll keep everybody up to date on that, on what's going to happen with us. I'll find out tomorrow whether we're going to have it.
So you have 4 copies.
No, because I saw it on Amazon for $7 a copy.
I was in here. Wasn't that book, but another book. I wanted to read that book. I heard it. Get it home.
No, it was a special deal I saw for like really inexpensive, and I thought there's always people who ask, how I got started, even when it comes to real estate. When I was doing real estate at the time or investing in, that was the book who really got everything started, and it changed perspective even for my whole family, my in-laws, their side of. When I started passing out the book, it really made a different impact, because people who don't understand entrepreneurship think you're crazy when you tell them what you're doing in certain things, or they just don't understand how people are willing to take risks, even when it's pretty conservative risk, like buying real estate investments. It's pretty conservative when you think about it, as long as you put the right factors in place and educate yourself. And that book really changes perspectives for a lot of people and got us to actually. We weren't overly aggressive in some of our investments at one point, but yeah, I would say it's still an important part of learning, and I will be giving some of those books away the next time we do have our meetup for sure. So the other thing is, this is one thing when we are here, if you have a question, please do not leave without asking it, because otherwise you might get an opportunity. Next month you might forget it by then, but you might also get some really good answers that is usually not going to come from me. So there's other people in the room here that are just brilliant. We have a guest speaker. He comes on and off, which when he's here, I mean, it's just a blessing to have him come, because Mike has a great background knowledge of internet marketing and copywriting and marketing in general and business. So I would like to actually at this point, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Inchalek. Mike Intellect. Last time I was having a hard time. Even when I read it, I have a hard time saying how am I going to pronounce it. So he's going to be doing a presentation today for us, a little bit on. Actually, I'll let you go ahead and explain what you're going to be talking about when we come up. And if I could have you mic up. Do you need the overhead? Okay.
We're going old school. Yeah. You tell me where you want it. Of course.
Okay, so one thing I did want to bring up that I saw this past week, 2 weeks. Has anybody seen the marketing efforts made by Pete Vargas past 2 weeks? It's been a long time since I've actually paid attention to someone putting marketing out there for a product. And Pete Vargas has been like slamming all of the biggest names that I've actually heard. Jeff Walker, Ray Edwards, they're all promoting this guy Pete Vargas and his program that's out there. And he did it, the product launch formula. For those of you that were here last month, I mentioned that I actually watched the product launch formula. And I actually got to see it put in action at the highest level. This guy has a video come out every 2 to 3 days. It'll come out, and it won't unlock the next one. If you show you, it's like preview, but you can't watch it until, and it's a feed that comes out. But his thing is all about talking and stages and being in front and being live and the messages and how to do the messages. His course is like $2,000, and one of the things that comes out is that not only will it teach you the power of how to do the marketing, how to do presentations in front of people and how to make it work, but the other part of it is also how to use even media to go ahead and build the audience that's going to come up and email marketing and everything else that comes up to it. So one of the things is to work at getting, one of the big things that he talked about is getting yourself in front of people, because conversion rates go up from like a good conversion rate for anything that's done online is about 1%. And if you get to 3, that's a really good conversion rate. Mm-hmm. When you have a room full of people that you are speaking live in front, it is not uncommon to do a 30%. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, it depends how you put your message together, how everything goes. So I would just like to say, if anybody's looking at going ahead and launching some type of course or product that's out there, mm-hmm. take a look at what this guy, his name is Pete Vargas. I'll mm-hmm. go ahead, I'll put it up later on in the evening. Mm-hmm. But if you look at his presentations and his videos that are out there, he'll talk a lot about it. It's called stages. Mm-hmm. Getting people on stage to go ahead and share their information. He took a nonprofit guy who was going and making this message out there that went from $50,000 a year to like 6 figures overnight, and then to 7 figures throughout the years, and millions that are just coming in after that by using the techniques of being on stage, live presentations. So with that being said, not only are we blessed to have Mike actually go ahead and speak in front of us and doing a live presentation, but I also want to encourage, if anybody has a message that they want to share with the group, please let me know. I am eager to share the platform to get knowledge off you guys, because honestly, the reason why we have been keeping this going is because every time I go home, I've gained a little more knowledge from you, the audience, always. And then it doesn't matter if you think, well, I only know a little bit about Pinterest. You know what, to be honest, I don't know anything about Pinterest compared to, so even if you share 10 minutes of knowledge with what else that you've learned and those type of techniques, it's fantastic, because somebody could utilize that. You never know, you could actually convert their business to double income. Those little things really, really help. So I just want to encourage that. And we'll also look at Pete Vargas' stuff, because that was a really good sales marketing video that had. It's very educational, but also the power behind actually speaking on stage. Mm-hmm. And again, I'd like to be on mic, and thank you very much for
thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you. So this is going to be, as opposed to a canned talk, which I've done a few of, much more interactive. I'm going to try and make this way more conversational and digging into stuff that might be interesting to you guys. And I'll put it in context. How many of you go to or have been to the comedy club that used to run over at Marie Callender's? And I know now it's moved, but you know. Yeah, and
Yeah, JJ's is.
exactly. Yep, yep. And I'm always amazed at the, and this is not a self-aggrandizing kind of statement, the talent they bring into that comedy club, you know, to play these really small rooms, but it's where people come to try stuff out. Right. So tonight I'm trying something out on you, right? This is a program I'm looking to build to launch next year. This is a terrible time of the year to launch programs because of the fact that the holidays are coming, et cetera. So I've got a message that I know is about right, but I want to get some feedback. That's kind of why I'm here. And I'm part of this community. I want to share in that regard as well. This is a little different than what we normally do here in that this is not an entirely marketing centric conversation. This is really about how to construct and run a business that's high growth and vibrant and stands up to competition and those sorts of things. And at the moment, my kind of working title for what I'm going to be building this on, and it's meant to be it's going to be a 6-week online course, et cetera. And I'm not selling anything here tonight. This is not about that. Is Triumph, right? But not spelled the normal way, but triumph as in the three essential things to put your business on steroids, to get your business accelerating, right? How many of you know who Eben Pagan is, or Eben Pagan, sorry, is? Really well-known internet marketer, has been very prolific lately. You know, in one of the courses I took from him, one of the first questions he starts with is, you know, he says, I'm always asked, and now he's been interviewed by Larry King and all kinds of, you know, higher end folks, you know, what's the one secret to business? You know, what's the one secret to business? And he said, you know, the one secret to business is that there isn't a damn single secret to business, right? You have to be good at a bunch of things. What I'm going to focus on today is the 3 things that I think create a fundamental element to creating a high growth, sustainable business. That doesn't mean you can ignore finance and people and the law, right? But I think these are the things you have to start with, right? And I apologize, it's very low tech, right? But I want to do a little more context creating, and that is, we're in a world where change is coming faster and faster, and it isn't going to stop. Right? I think the most compelling version of that message that I've heard is it was something like all of human knowledge between the dawn of humanity till the 1800s, right, was duplicated by 1900. Between 1900 and 1940, it doubled again. It's now doubling roughly every 3 years, right? And it's getting faster. Big data, analytics, artificial intelligence, where we don't even really know what we're learning, but we're applying intelligence faster and faster, right? Is a backdrop that affects our competitive marketplace, affects the people we're working with and our customers. It affects technology change, and being able to deal with change, right, is going to be essential to not building a business that does really well and flames out in 3 years because you mastered Pinterest, but then Pinterest goes away, or Facebook changes its advertising rules, or Google moves the AdWords from the side to just top and bottom and changes the bidding structure and starts to use artificial intelligence. Everything's changing. Count on it, right? But you have to have bedrock somewhere. That's really what I want to talk about today, is the bedrock of it, right? And the 3 things that create that bedrock. So the first I want to talk about is what we call identity in the marketing world, right? What is your company all about? And the best description I've heard about why this is important is that, and I apologize, my back's to you, so let me write it and then I'll tell you, right? There's in the end, there are two really important parts of what it is we do with marketing and business reality, right? One is, what's our company about? What sets it apart? Who does it serve? How does it do it differently? And how well do we do that, right? And then the other part is, how do we communicate that? That's what's more traditionally thought of as marketing, although frankly, in the way I look at the world, marketing's everything. Marketing's the strategy, marketing's the offerings, right? Marketing is understanding the customers. But there are a lot of businesses that have an amazing internal reality, inside reality, and nobody knows it. Because their marketing stinks. It looks like everybody else's marketing, right? The company that I know that popularized talking about this way is a company called Monopolize Your Marketplace out of Texas. And they wrote a book called Monopolize Your Marketplace. And it was all about how do you message so that what you do better and different is clear, right? And among the stories they tell, right, is the story, they worked with an auto dealership, auto service location, where you could eat off the floors, right? They had 80 technicians all trained at the highest level you could train the technicians. They had guarantees out the wazoo around making sure that the repairs they instigated for you were flawless, right? They were the best you could be. And yet, when you looked at the marketing, it looked exactly like every other car service place. It was qualified technicians, 16-hour operation, fully trained on the Hondas and Toyotas, right? Top customer service, right? All the kind of pablum, but really the meaningless words that get thrown around to try and describe a business. And to do this effectively, we're going to talk about both of these in a second, but to do this effectively, you have to get the specifics. You have to build a case. You have to deal with reality, and you have to have something to build it on, right? My own personal opinion, by the way, about marketing is that this actually breaks into two, right? There's the part that is the inside reality. If you have something really different to talk about, you're going to always be stronger. But there's also just well-written copy. If I'm selling a diet program, right, there are ways to sell that just by playing on the emotions, using active verbs, using really compelling language which connects with you, whether it works or not, whether it's useful or not, because it's really all around the structure of it. But marketing that comes from integrity is to use all those emotional hooks and to have something better, have something fundamentally unique. And the reason that I always start here, and this is number one of the 3 triumph elements. The reason I start here is that it needs to flow everywhere. It flows into your marketing, and it's going to flow into what we talk about as number 2 as well, right? One of the first meetings I came to here at the Santa Clarita Internet Marketers Group was one where Marisa Murgatroyd came and spoke. She runs a company called Live Your Message out of Marina Del Rey. We went to one of her seminars. I ended up joining a couple of her programs. I now, in addition to my own business, coach for her. And you want to talk about the product launch formula and growth and how this is going on. And if you're not aware, most internet marketers are struggling now. Even the ones who've been around for a while. We've seen almost a 30 to 40% pullback in the sale of online training courses and things like that. Because people are jaded. They've been promised the world before, right? There are an awful lot of people out there selling things that don't work, never worked, or used to work, right? And there are a few who are doing really well, right? In this most recent course on stages, there's actually another one going on simultaneously about how to book stages and talk, is one example. Marisa just completed, she has a program that she runs in the 4th quarter called the Experience Product Masterclass. It's all about helping first-time entrepreneurs launch a product and make $2,000 with it during the 10 weeks of the course, right? It's very focused on the elements of that. She has grown almost 100% a year. She has over 700 students this year. I'm coaching 51 students right now with more coming. And the cool part about that for me, because I love to learn, is I'm dealing with people who are launching all kinds of different businesses, from golf instruction to Reiki healing, right? To somebody who's doing something for the Scottish Tourism Board, right? So, but these principles, which she teaches in a slightly different way, underlie everything. So I want to talk about this just a little bit for a second. How many of you, by the way, have read the book Blue Ocean Strategy? Anyone heard of it? Okay. All right. The premise behind the book, and maybe we'll do a really short exercise of that ilk, is that you don't want to be competing like everybody else is competing. You want to approach the market in a fundamentally different way. Remember this thing we talked about with change, right? We not only have change as we traditionally think about it, but we now get competition from pretty much anywhere. The internet has kind of allowed people to compete from all corners of the earth, right? Where you might have before had one competitor and been able to dominate your local market. Now it takes literally nothing to offer products and services into your place, which is another reason you have to be fundamentally different. I'll tell you a little quick anecdote about how it used to be and how easy it was, relatively speaking. And this was a brilliant kind of coup pulled off by Monopolize Your Marketplace. We worked with a company out of Las Vegas. They were a heating and ventilating and air conditioning company. Basically, they did air conditioning repair. So let me ask you a question. Put yourself in the shoes. This was back in the days of the Yellow Pages, right? You didn't have the internet to go to. One of the beauties of the Yellow Pages was, first of all, everybody had one. But the second thing is that the ad went in there and nothing changed for a year. If you could pull off being different, fundamentally different, you had a year of a different position from everybody else. But if you were in Las Vegas, what do you imagine would be the most compelling need of somebody who's looking through the Yellow Pages for an air conditioner repair person?
24-hour service.
Okay, kind of the same, immediate, 24 hours, but immediate service, right? Why do you need it immediately, by the way? Really damn hot, right? Right. Not all that different from Santa Clarita, by the way, right? Although just for a narrower period of time. So imagine this ad. The ad said, if your house is not cooling down within 1 hour of your phone call to us, your repair is free. Okay? Big full page Yellow Pages ad. Do you think that that ad pulled better than the other ads in the Yellow Pages that said qualified service technicians, train available, free estimates, right? Friendly technicians? You think that would have been a stronger position? Sounds ludicrous, by the way, doesn't it? Right? I mean, anybody can make a stupid promise, right? And I'll come to how they did that. But that business grew 10 times in size that year, right? In fact, they ended up being acquired. They acquired several companies because they needed it to keep up with demand. And then they were acquired. And the people cashed out and retired, right? And here is the secret. What did they do? They they bought portable cooling units. They contracted with heating, ventilating, and air conditioning companies all over the county to deploy them. They got the leads. They deployed the technicians. They staged the coolers in different places around Vegas. Didn't say your air conditioner would be running within an hour. Said your house would be cooling down. And by the way, customers were fine with that. If they had a room to huddle in while their air conditioner was being fixed, that was great, right? Nobody could compete with it because it was in the Yellow Pages, right? It was a brilliant strategy, brilliantly executed, very well communicated, and yet wouldn't work the same way today, because 3 days after it was announced, it would be copied. Right? Now, it does come down to whether you can implement and a whole bunch of things like that. But you can imagine how today you have to be much more nimble and much better at what you do to sustain a difference. Right? So let's talk about identity. I think one of the examples they use in Blue Ocean Strategy that they talk about is, and help me if you've read it, I believe they talked about as one example, for example, competing in the fast food world, right? And they start with a diagram that I think looks more or less like this. Can't spell. That was probably not complete, but they took the primary factors on which someone might buy from a fast food location: price, quality, speaking about the food now, the environment, right? The service quality, the speed of service. And I'm sure there can be some others, but that's going to be a pretty good range of it. You might have a breadth of the menu or that sort of thing, right? And they basically charted out where people were, right? And so you might, I'm just going to make it up for now, but identify the fact that, well, McDonald's, most of the people focus on low price, right? They're in medium to low quality. The environment is relatively low, low end. I probably should put price up here, meaning that they're price leaders, but the service is generally poor, but the speed of execution is good, right? And you can kind of map out where people are, and then try to identify on what basis are you going to compete, right? So let's talk about that for a second, and let's just kind of spitball. If we were looking collectively to fund and open a chain of fast food restaurants, what would we want to do different? Because what we want to do, this is part of what our identity is, right? Is pick something fundamentally different, right? We could go healthier. We could go better environment, right? What do you think? Do we want to go grass-fed beef and locally sourced vegetables? We want to, we could go for, we're going to go for a quality food offering with a medium price. But by the way, along with a quality food offering, we'd better have a better environment. People don't want to come into a low-end place to eat better food, right? Right? And we better give them better service as well, kind of comes along with the experience. But they're probably willing to compromise on speed, right? We would do an analysis like this, right? And then these are the things we would be wanting to communicate, right? We would be wanting to talk about how at SCV Co's, new fast food restaurant, we would be talking about how much healthier our food is, how our beef is not injected with hormones, right? Yeah, they're raised in a friendly and low stress environment, right? Our environment, we've got free Wi-Fi, but we've got tables with room to put your laptop. We've got plugs for your electronics there, right? We would build this out to identify a position that is different and that we can communicate's different. Now, by the way, all of this has to be built on who the customer is, right? We can't just make up things that are different and assume it will bring customers. We can't have somebody who loves the color pink and say, I think if we make everything in here pink, we'll be flooded with, a part of the population who wants to be around pink. without verifying it, right? We'd better be focused on real needs of that marketplace. We have to understand our customer. And we have to convert that into kind of specification and performance things that relate to how do you deliver this well, right? And when we're done, we're going to operationally want to make sure that we stay on top of that difference. If we're going to build a business that's around better quality, then we need to make that a focus. Our department that buys food has got to be responsible around finding the right sources. We've got to be ready that if the FDA comes out and says grass-fed beef's terrible for you, we've got the new tests and everybody's diet's going to change again, right? That we can pivot to something else, that we're on top of those things, right? But we have to have a way to stay on top of this, and we have to then communicate it really well. Make sense? Okay. And this is really the cornerstone of your business, right? So as an exercise, and there are so many ways businesses can be made different, right? I want to talk about, let's just take one element, because we can have better product, we can have better service, we can have an environment that draws people, we can tie ourselves up with celebrities, we can have live music, we have so many different ways we can differentiate, right? But what I want to do is, let's, does anybody have a business that they'd like to, or a business concept they'd like to, a jewelry store? Okay, fair enough. Okay, so, and okay, who's the client? What is this a high-end jewelry store? A low-end? Is this custom stuff? Is this okay? So this is custom. Is it for high-end clientele? Okay, but for the affluent as opposed to how to help folks who are on a budget. Okay, so we're talking about wedding ring prices kind of thing, right? Okay. Okay, fair enough. So let's talk about ways in which we can make this store different. Let's just, right now we won't evaluate ideas at all, but let's just be creative about what could we do to make a jewelry store that delivers a fundamentally different product or experience, right, to fairly high-end clients compared to what you know about jewelry stores. Okay, yep. And again, we're not going to, okay. Who's the buyer, by the way? Is it are we trying to promote a couple's experience, or to make a guy feel more comfortable buying a ring without the woman knowing?
I would say the guy.
Okay.
And also, since it's custom,
Mm-hmm.
to have a way that people can design their ring online, so
Mhm.
they're not sitting there with somebody, they can
Mhm.
do it without talking to a real person.
Right. Okay. So we've got, I just want to make a note, even though it isn't a feature per se, the guy is the target, right? So one of our issues here is how to get us brutes, comfortable with making a purchase when everything we buy for Christmas gets returned the day after, and we're asked why we have such terrible taste, right? So the guy is the target, and I'm sorry, and we talked about, so online design, right? And I presume that would include the ability to visualize it, right? Like you might be able to upload a picture of your to-be fiance's hand and be able to see it on there, right? Or something like that. So there's a visualization thing, right? I would imagine return policy and guarantees would be pretty darn important. Yeah.
Thinking about that too.
Because the biggest fear is
Mhm.
my social
She doesn't like it.
Yep. There you go. Okay. So, yep. So lifetime repair and cleaning. Yeah.
In sizing. So you might want to switch wives. with,
Yep.
you know.
Or their fingers might get smaller over time.
Or they may gain
Right.
weight in the process.
I was being a little more.
Good save.
Slight alteration.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them offer that instrument.
Right. Okay. So. Mm-hmm. 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 So.
So you tell us one of those, like, tell us your story.
Yep.
Design a ring around it.
Sure. Well, and by the way, you start thinking about the whole picture here, right? We're selling to a guy. We're trying to reduce his nervousness, right? We're trying to help him create something meaningful to their relationship and maybe even a whole event, right? In fact, you might tie in a whole engagement planning thing, right? Like, you know, just like the flash mob things, et cetera, you know, really a high end. This is going to be, we're going to get the restaurant, the waiters are going to be on it. They're trained for this, right? We do such and such for how you're going to give the ring, right?
Cakes that look so real that no one will ever know.
Right? Well, or maybe part of the guarantee is you only pay for basically the gold and basic part of the ring, but it's got zirconium in it until she says yes. Right? Right?
What
But-
if they made you an exact copy that wasn't fake?
That's
Keep the valuable one on.
exactly. Sure. There you go. Right. So we got dupe ring, right?
In a safe. Do a tie-in. They get a free safe with their, not free for you, but.
Yep. Right. So, what's that?
They just call themselves that.
Yeah. Yeah, and jewelry tends to be. I'm not a big fan of branding per se, right? I'm really more about features, but jewelry can be a big branding thing, right? I mean, when you watch the De Beers commercials and the other commercials, they're not selling the ring; they're selling the emotion, the connectedness, the future. What's that?
He went to jail.
There you go. Right. Yeah. Exactly. But right. So, and part of this, by the way, you know, if we were to take each one of these and break it down, right? And this probably isn't a great example to move into operational stuff, but if the guy's the target, what does that say about your salespeople, by the way? Are they either going to be, and it might go either way.
Oh, no, they're gonna be hot women.
Could be, but that could get them into trouble too. Or it could be guys who advise them.
You know, what's their last hurrah?
Sure. And then on the other ancillary services we have, yep, right. That's right. Pick out the. Never mind. Yes. Okay. So you know, this is going to affect your sales process, right? And by the way, you're going to measure some of your marketing and other things based on who shows up and what the mix is, right? Now, by the way, this decision that the guy is the target is an important one because you could focus instead on couples, or you could focus on the woman who goes and picks it out and then help her suggest the idea and pop along the, you know, the kind of things she likes in a way that doesn't feel pushy and pressured, right? There you go. right? Yep. But can you, and, you know, this issue, by the way, linked to the story, which could be, this is not just that, you know, this is part of the guys, the target in the sales process, but now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to ask you everything about how you met her, what her birthday is, what you like most about her, right? And maybe you're very articulate, but an awful lot of guys aren't. But so we're not only going to pick the stones, the shape, etc., but we are going to write an unbelievably romantic card or letter that goes with it, right? That tells that story in a way that'll never be forgotten, right? That's something you don't find in jewelry stores, right? And yet that would be a pretty high value thing to add, right? So, and this idea of the dupe ring, never seen that before, by the way, but having an absolute duplicate ring where the real one only comes out for high-end parties, or maybe stays in the safe, depends kind of on the couple, right? Is a really cool idea. And the guarantee, remember, and have you guys talked about, you're familiar with the concept of what's called risk reversal in marketing, right? Which is about marketing, everybody, or should I talk about risk reversal for a second? Okay, so risk reversal is generally speaking, it comes in a variety of different forms. It's basically the money back guarantee, right? Take this course, do what I say, and if you don't get the results, you'll get your money back. Or, and there are lots of different versions of this, and you see this, by the way, late night television, infomercials, etc., right? With your Ginsu knives and your vacuum cleaner that's also a CD player that, you know, tunes in, you know, satellite radio. You know, it's you know, return, get all your money back except for shipping and handling, which is half the price of the product, right? But it is a way to make you feel comfortable with the purchase because you can back out. And yes, obviously, as the merchandiser, we lose money if somebody exercises the guarantee. And the idea isn't to hoodwink them, isn't to have fine print that screws them over. It is that in the big picture, so many more people make the purchase because of the guarantee that the cost of actually honoring the guarantee is smaller, right? And guarantees are crucially important in almost every marketing equation, you know, for that reason. And the only real issue is you have to be careful in certain kinds of businesses, and we do this in the coaching and training business as well. You know, if I'm a personal trainer, which clearly I'm not, right? And I'm going to guarantee you come in and you're going to get ripped six-pack and you're going to be able to bench press 225 pounds, right? And you don't do the exercises, right? And I've spent my time working with you, that's kind of a problem. And by the way, most people don't stick with programs like that. So there are times you have to put performance kind of guarantees. You have to submit your homework. You have to show you showed up on the video calls and you did the work. You have to, if you come in here and do the work and lift the iron and you don't get the results, okay, I'll give you your money back, or I'll continue to, you know, personally train you for a while or whatever, right? Sure, please. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then others will say within like 30, has to be within 30 or 60 days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on?
Yeah. Well, so for example, in this course where I'm coaching, that is there's a guaranteed performance. It's kind of unheard of. This is not just you'll be happy at the end. You'll make $2,000 with the business you build in this course if you show up for your coaching sessions, you submit your homework, etc. Now, the reason for that, first of all, is because it's really just a guarantee. The course costs $2,000. You're going to make $2,000. They give you the difference back, but they have very real costs for people like me to do the coaching. So if they're paying me to help you and you don't do the work, they're actually out of pocket. It's not, you know, most online courses have virtually no fulfillment costs. You know, you're downloading stuff from the Amazon cloud or whatever. You're paying pennies to deliver the videos and the other pieces, and therefore a complete satisfaction guarantee, frictionless, gets the best response, right? And the reality is, very small numbers of people, you know, pick it up. The numbers are under 20% in terms of, and they're usually well under 10%. Because the fact of the matter, and I want to go back and talk about change for just a second, but somebody keep me honest on time. The reality is, you know, marketing is really the study of two things: psychology and algebra or math, right? The numbers have to work. You got to know your numbers because of what you're investing to get a return. And you have to know why people buy, you know, why people do the things they do. And the fact of the matter is, when it comes to online courses, when it comes to pretty much anything, we as human beings, when we make a purchase, you know, if I want to lose weight and I go out and I say, God, I'm just so tired of being overweight, out of shape, puffing at the top of stairs. They hooked me with how embarrassed I am with where it is. $200, sure. And as soon as I spend the $200, I actually feel like I've done something. It's like I took an action toward losing weight. Cool. Now where's my hoagie? And let's go out and do something else, right? And so there is this natural thing that comes in courses and everything else where we feel good just taking the action. For some of us, it goes a step further. We show up at the seminar or we do the other things, but we don't actually implement. The implementation is the hard thing, right? We go, we feel like we've really, you know, invested and accomplished something, but the reality is there's no change. There's no fundamental change. And so that, I want to come back to this change thing. And depending on what business you're in, one of the things to recognize that I'm learning more and more, you know, there are, you know, they talk about the three brains we have, right? There's the reptilian brain, there's the social brain, and I think there's the, I don't remember what it's called, the intellectual brain, but the kind of the thinking brain. But the reptilian brain, which is called the amygdala, sits on top of the spinal cord. It kind of gets first shot at all your reactions, you know, in terms of where your nerves are connected. And the way we're wired evolutionarily is that the reptilian brain is there to protect us. And the reptilian brain assumes whatever habits you have, they are life critical habits. Your ability to see that saber-toothed tiger and run, right, is crucial. There is no time to think about it, right? If your first instinct is to do something, do it. And if you try to change those habits by having some higher level of the brain, using your emotions or your intellect to override them, is a very difficult process. It's why habit change is so hard, right? And I've been reading a lot about this stuff. Everybody ever heard the, it takes 21 days to change a habit? Anybody ever heard that? Bullshit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that online, sorry. Absolute bunk. Where it came from, by the way, is there was a doctor. I mean, it was not manipulatively bad information, right? There's a doctor who worked with amputees and found that on average, it took 21 days for people to stop feeling the false pains and false sensations of limbs that have been cut off. And so made the nice, easy leap of faith that if you want to change a habit, it must be 21 days for anything. Not true. Gets Stanford University is where they study this stuff very heavily, other places as well. And the range is up to 9 months. Meaning every single day, if you do it every single day, it may take as long as 9 months before you no longer exhaust your supply of self-discipline and willpower to make it happen, as opposed to it becoming a habit. So if you're in the coaching and consulting business, if you're trying to train people on new things, if you're working with business owners, if you're trying to get people to act differently, understand there is an extraordinary resistance to this. And when it comes to getting real results as opposed to just delivering education, you'd better include a component of accountability and support to actually implement it. Because there are an awful lot of, if you're anything like me, which I hope you're not for your sake, right? You're thrilled with learning new things, but when it comes to deploying them, right? Which is where the rubber meets the road, right? We don't do it nearly enough. I won't say that for you. I don't do it nearly enough. I'm working damn hard on that, right? But you know, that's where this comes from. And that's where if you're trying to make a fundamental change in your own business, in your own lifestyle, whatever it is, you've got to understand what you're fighting against and take action. There's an excellent little book called Mini Habits. There are 3 of them, actually. Mini Habits is the first one. Then he does one on mini habits for weight loss and mini habits for about perfectionism. And basically the idea is you need to change your habits in such a small way that you don't feel the pain of it. You make a commitment with yourself. I will do 1 push-up a day before I fall asleep. And if you end up remembering when you fall into bed, do the push-up in bed, right? But make it so easy that you can't fail, right? And be prepared to fail even at that, right? But set really small targets and grow from there. It's why, and the numbers around are appalling around things like New Year's resolutions and that sort of thing about, you know, about how well we make changes. It's why gym memberships go up like crazy, right? They sell the heck out of January and the gym is empty by February, right? It's human nature.
So
Did you have a
for
question?
you as a coach,
Mhm.
your mentees are accountable to you.
Yes.
What, weekly basis, monthly basis?
Depends on the program. In that particular program, and I've got different coaching clients in different ways. There are either group or one-on-one calls weekly, typically, and they have they have basically homework to fill out or milestones to accomplish.
The technique that you were taught,
Mhm.
now you're teaching people whatever it is.
Mhm.
Do you see more people following through, or
Yeah, there's sorry to cut you off. Yep. The answer is yes. The number still is nowhere near 100%. There are people, I've seen people in $10,000 and $15,000 programs that sign up and I never see from again. It's the easiest money I'll ever make, right? They pay it as a lump sum. Life gets in their way and they say, well, maybe another time, and $15,000 isn't much to them, right? I've got people who spend 20 bucks and will work on it 4 hours a day to get it right. You know, it really depends on how ready they are to make the change, right? The basics, by the way, of that particular course, which the Experience Product Masterclass, which I'm coaching in right now, is how many of you have heard the term gamification? Right? So, as human beings, we're wired to compete, to succeed, to win, to have fun playing, and so it's trying to make things very experiential. And it's really kind of a philosophy of course design as well. There's this kind of insidious thing that happens when you build courses, which is we teachers love to show off how smart we are, right? So you want to learn marketing from me, I'm going to make sure you got value. Here you go. 8 volumes of 1,000 pages each that take you everything from A to Z in marketing, right? Well, the reality is that's just overwhelming. It's almost a guarantee you will get nothing out of it, right? I've got to distill it down for you. In fact, the reality is things are moving more and more toward done for you services, right? Because people just don't have the time anymore. Please take this off my plate, right? Now, they're often well combined with something educational, whose job basically is to make sure you understand how important it is to do, and kind of a dirty little secret is, and how really hard it's going to be for you to do it, right? But hey, that's what I do. I do this in my sleep. Why do you want to take 10 times longer than me? You're already busy enough, right? That's where things are going, right? And if I could hire by the way, unfortunately, there are limits to how far that can go. If I could hire somebody to do the push-ups for me so I could get in shape, baby, you know, I've done that a long time ago. I'm joking, actually. I actually enjoy working out, but you know, that is where we're going because we don't have enough time. We got way too much demand on us. And it's true of all of our customers, et cetera. We got to get straight to the point. We got to be about what's different, et cetera. So, number one was identity. How am I doing on time? Where are we? Okay, cool. So, number two is kind of the receiving basin for what you do with that identity. And that is we now need to take what it is we said that sets us apart and turn it into not just something actionable, but something measurable, right? Now, when we talked fast food, when we talked jewelry store, we actually didn't have a lot of things that went over into operations very easily. But if we were going to build our business based on really fast shipping, really extraordinary service, the speed we come to your home, whatever those particular elements are, our job as business owners, business managers, is to convert those things into measurables. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first is, and I know there are a lot of kind of solopreneurs here doing things for themselves, which is fine. As you grow, whether you bring on employees, contractors, or outsource, there will be things that are in your best interest to give to someone else. There's a saying, it goes something like, you know, find somebody who plays at what you work at and spend your time, you know, playing at what you play at, right? You're doing yourself and your business a disservice in the long run when you can, right? To spend your time on things that somebody else can do cheaper and better, right? I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines. She's fantastic. She's college educated. She does a lot of the stuff I hate. And it costs me $140 a week for her full time, right? That's the reality. Is there are a lot of really good people who live in different areas where the pay is different, and from a moral standpoint, we can pay them more, we can bonus them, we can do all kinds of cool things. But the reality is, she's thrilled to have the work because there isn't other work where she can make that money there, and she's way better at some of the things, right, than I am. And whether you're using internet marketing experts, copywriters, graphic artists, web designers, cold callers, right? Don't burn yourself out on those things. Build a team around you. But whether this is just for you or for the team, one of the challenges I see in most entrepreneurs is that we got into business because we thought we could do it better than everybody else, right? We had a passion, we had a vision for this. We tend to be control freaks, right? And by the way, in the beginning, we don't have the money to pay other people. So we start by doing it all. And then when we have just enough money to be able to afford it, we bring on people who aren't good enough because we can't afford the good ones, right? So now we direct everything they do. Wait a minute, what do you, move over, let me show you how to do this. Haven't you ever done this before, right? I've seen business owner after business owner. Number one, it's not a fun relationship to watch, right? But they're never going to be helped out by the people they have because they number one, couldn't afford the right person, or they have the right person, but they're so control focused that they're not able to leverage that. And the answer is they have to take the fundamental elements of what makes their business tick, and they need to turn it into metrics. I need to be able to say, if Chris is my head of sales, here are the 3 things I'm going to look at every week to know that you're on top of your game. I will work with you in the beginning because you may not know all the details, but eventually you're going to know more than I am. And all I really care about is you'd better be delivering 120 leads a week, right? They better be costing less than $52 a lead, right? And we better be converting them at a 40% level or better. Otherwise, you're getting the wrong leads, right? And I will pay you a bonus as you beat those things, right? Same thing operationally. Your job is to get the manufacturing costs down on this by 20%. We're going to look at this every week. We're going to look at inventory levels and manufacturing costs, whatever it is. Metrics are crucial. One of the key things about metrics is they have to be forward-looking instead of backward-looking. Does anybody think they know what I mean by that? Anybody want to tell me what is forward versus backward-looking? That's in the right direction. Yep. So let's pick on Chris. Let's pick on Chris again for a second, right? If what I do, and it's a very typical thing to do, is to say, Chris, you're the head of sales, right? We're a $2 million company. We want to get to be a $3 million company, right? 50 weeks in a year, roughly speaking. That means we want $60,000, if I did the math right. $60,000 a week in sales from you, right? So I want to see your revenue numbers. We're gonna sit down every Friday to find out how your revenues are doing. Okay? Because as long as you're achieving $60,000 a week, we're gonna be doing well, right? We're gonna be on path for our $3 million. What's the problem with, or is there a problem with saying, Chris, you got to be focused on $60,000 a week worth of revenue?
Well, it's limiting him to 60.
That's certainly true. That's certainly true. But there's a bigger problem. True, and you're in the right direction. So let's say that Chris delivers 55,000 this week. What caused that, do we think? I mean, did he, on Thursday night, did he go home and say, I got another $5,000 worth of revenue I need to deliver? Is he likely to be able to directly control revenue? If in fact the process is he has to cold call a certain number of people, make a certain number of presentations, close a certain number of them. In fact, aren't I in trouble if he decided, because his wife's been after him for coming home late every night for the last several months, he's just not going to cold call this month, right? He's just going to keep the revenues coming because he's got plenty in the pipeline. He's going to do just fine with his revenue, but we're screwed in March because there's nobody in the pipeline. We have no visibility into the fact that we're going to have a sales crater and there's not a thing we can do about it. If we have a 3-month sales cycle or whatever it is, we have to be measuring the things that affect how work today delivers what's going on inside the company. You're absolutely right. There's a limiting issue as well. And certainly we want to motivate him. You know, if Chris delivers 80,000 or 120,000 as a business owner, I should be thrilled to keep paying him more if he exceeds expectations. But I got to know that the pieces are working. Because again, if he doesn't cold call, it doesn't work. If he just fills out the logs of cold calls but doesn't close anybody because he's not calling on the right people, and the conversion rates are going down because he decided to change who he's looking at, I want to see that. I want to know that. If conversion rates were down last week, we need to talk about why. It's one thing if it's just an off week, right? But if he just started moving from Google AdWords to Craigslist and they're converting at half of what we had before, we don't want to wait till that shows up in revenue 3 months from now, right? So number 2 here is taking all the key elements of identity, and in some cases for certain parts of your business, it won't tie to identity. For your finance department, right? There may not be things that tie to whether we're running the, whether the fast food location has got the best food, et cetera. In fact, there's natural pull. Finance is going to say, don't clean the bathrooms as often, we'll save some money, right? But then our environment goes down. But what finance is responsible for is making sure we're collecting, right? And we don't have outstanding payables that are really, or receivables that are really huge, and we've got money that may never be collected, right? And that we keep extending credit to, people who might go under, and we keep giving them product. So we got to convert all these things into metrics, right? All right, let's talk about number 3. Number 3 is the hardest one and the one we can all control, in a manner of speaking. And this really gets to us as individuals. We talked about how hard it is to change. We talked about the propensity to over control, to not bring on the right people. One of the things we have to realize, and there's an interesting kind of paradox. In theory, while there are rare exceptions, if you're building a company, you're building it so either you can cash out for a lot of money, or it can run with very little input from you, so you can live off the lifestyle that it delivers, right? Now, you might not be money motivated. It might be so you can influence more people, so you can give more of it away, right? But in the end, to really establish an efficient company, it has to be able to run with very little of your input. You can't sell a company that depends on you. If I've got a company that's really successful and I say, Chris, would you like to buy it? By the way, I sell everything. All the clients will leave if I leave, right? And all the department heads I have are incompetent, but don't worry, I take care of it, and you'll be able to too, right? He'll run away scared, right? Any business broker, anybody who tries to make that sale, right, will run into that problem. You have a valueless company if you are horribly intertwined with this operation, right? And you also will not have a company that will give you the lifestyle advantages you want if you've got to be working 80 hours a week to be able to make sure you make payroll and that the stuff doesn't hit the fan, right? So one of your principal jobs is to get the company to a place that it runs almost without your help, which means you have to, over time, change your role, right? Who here is familiar with what's called the 80-20 rule? Everybody? Good. Yep. I always forget, by the way. Anybody remember what Pareto's first name was? I think it's Alfredo or Wilfredo or something like that. He's an Italian economist, right? Who can tell me what the 80-20 rule is based on, by the way? Anybody want to articulate it for us?
20% of people read, 80% of your income will come from 20% of your work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It is in the most general form, the 80-20 rule says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts, right? So for example, as a company owner, if you work 60 hours a week, let's say, 12 hours a week, 20% of that is responsible for 80% of the results you got in your business, right? This is virtually universally true. And it applies and it has some really remarkable properties I'll talk about here in a second. One of them is 80% of your revenues come from 20% of your customers. 80% of your profits come from 20% of your products, right? Turns out, by the way, the flip side is true. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your customers, right? In fact, it's a really important strategy to be able to look at your product offerings and get rid of the ones that don't sell well, get rid of the customers that are the problem customers. In fact, everybody has to be very familiar with We all see the Geico commercials with the little gecko, right? Which is the one with Flow? Anybody? Progressive. Anybody, and they have their price tool, right? And with the price tool, they tell you what all the competing prices will be for the insurance you're looking for. What you don't know is that they purposely price themselves out of the business for people they don't want. They are not trying to be cheaper than everybody. If you don't have the right profile driving record, if you don't live in a safe enough location, right, their price is going to be higher than the competition. They are actually effectively pushing you away. They're not just pricing themselves high, they're making sure you know other people are cheaper because they're trying to avoid those losses, right? And it's crucially important. A couple of things I want to say about 80-20. First of all, and there's a book out there, really valuable book. The 80-20 rule, I think the original book was written by Richard Koch. He's also written Simplify and the STAR Principles. All three of those books are fantastic. So in terms of, a purchase to make, I think they are really fantastic. Simplify is all about the fact that major money-making opportunities have come from companies that fundamentally change the proposition. They make it much cheaper or much faster, much simpler, much as in like by a factor of 10 or so. And I remember he, part of when, and I'm sorry, I'm off on a tangent. He talks about Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company, right? And how fundamentally going to the assembly line changed not only the speed with which cars were manufactured, but the price by a factor of 10 over what was out there. And one of the things I didn't know that I learned from that is, anybody know, so first of all, what colors could you get the original Model T in?
Black.
Black or black, right? Why,
Any color you want, as long as it's black.
why only black?
I don't know.
Only had to make one product.
True. No, but there's a better reason. Why only black?
It's dirty.
Black paint was the only paint that dried fast enough to keep up with the manufacturing line. And this was all about speed and simplification. So Richard Koch wrote 80-20. I wouldn't go there, right? I would buy Simplify, and I would buy, what was the other one I said? The STAR Principle, which is about what kind of businesses always outperform the market and what, et cetera. He wrote the 80-20 rule, but then Perry Marshall, who's an extraordinary marketer out of Chicago, wrote, I think it's called the 80-20 of sales and marketing. Really compelling book. One of the things Perry says is, and I'm certain he's true, and one of the things I love about him is that he thinks strategically about what's happening in the future. He doesn't just teach you and talk about what happened 2 years ago, which in the internet world is the Middle Ages. He says, it's moving to 95.5. Here we are in voting Tuesday, right? We've got this huge rift in our society, and certainly one of the things that's been talked about is, how the spread has been created between the haves and haves not. I hate the terminology, right? But the really successful people are making more and more money. The really unsuccessful people are struggling more and more, right? And it's really due to this, because what's happened is the knowledge to put energy in the right place has always been there. But with the internet and the technical tools, the ability to leverage that knowledge into real results, it used to be you had to build factories, you had to raise money, you had to do a lot of complicated things. But now it becomes really easy to dominate markets and do things in an extraordinarily effective way. So knowing how to do this right has even more power than it ever did before. It's an important thing to recognize. If you don't spend time thinking about where are the results coming from in the business you run and in your life in general, right? It's a really crucial principle. Whether it's being a mom or a dad or a brother or a community member, an athlete, a business person, this is true, right? And it gets to be being really efficient. So the other thing is 80-20 is what's called fractal. Fractal, which means that patterns repeat themselves, right? You look at a leaf, the edges of a leaf, and you zoom in on a microscope, and they just look like the deeper you go in, the patterns look exactly the same. But it turns out this becomes true as well. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say we're a Starbucks, and we make $10,000 in receipts a day, right? And we have, I'm going to make it up, 2,000 customers, right? So average price for sale is $5, right? Well, the 80-20 principle would tell us that actually $8,000 of that came from 400 clients, right? Which means their average cost per sale was $20, right? But it's fractal, which means 20% of that, right? Sorry, 80% of that, $6,400 came from 80 people, right? That's an average of $80 a sale. And until you run out of people, the same is true. I won't be able to do the math as well, but 80% of that, which is something like 5,100, right, comes from 16 people. These people, now you're starting to talk about $300 an average purchase. Who are these people, by the way? They're the ones coming in and buying carafes of coffee for their companies, right? All the way down to the fact that Starbucks sells a $1,600 coffee maker for that one person. And you can take this model, and he talks about the NFL, for example, and luxury suites all the way down to basically, the walk-in $8 seats. It fits this model always. And it has to do, by the way, as a business, with what kind of prices you should offer things in and what kind of buy. Anyway, this idea of 80-20 is extremely powerful. And I'll put one more concept on because we're out of time. Who here has studied time management with folks who talk about, every Sunday night you sit down, you create your goals, you look at your roles in life, etc., and you set separate goals as mom, as business owner, as church goer, etc., right? The same thing should be true about the way you think about your business and how you apply 80-20. When we think about efficiency, we think about what we get out of it. The model that Perry Marshall talks about is, I'm not going to get this exactly right. What you need to do is you can apply 80-20 to your own personal efficiency. This is the stuff like wake up productive, eat green shakes, take a walk when you first wake up, use the 50-minute hour to focus yourself, right? But you need to make sure as a business owner that you spend time thinking at other levels. I'm going to kind of ignore the skills for the moment, but the questions you would ask as a manager of people are different than the questions you would ask as the owner of a company, then are different than the questions you would ask as an investor, right? The higher up you go, you start worrying about things like, let's take our jewelry store, right? What's happening in the economy, right? How could that affect things? What's happening to marriage, right? Probably none of us are old enough to know, but this idea of buying diamonds as a symbol of love was created by the diamond industry in like the 1940s or 50s. Just what's that? By De Beers, yep, exactly, because they had I think the mining in South Africa or whatever it was, right? Exactly. Just like lobster, by the way, used to be the thing you threw away. They were thought of as, underwater insects. They were repulsive until it was changed around to being one of the most, sought after kinds of foods. So if you're an owner, you have to start thinking about really high-end stuff. And you should be thinking about, should I buy this other company? Hey, I'm serving high-end clientele. Well, I need low-end. An investor worries about things like, well, our market's cyclical. If I've got money, if I've got all my family's fortune tied up in jewelry, when do jewelry markets crater, and what else can I get into that goes up when jewelry goes down? Right? There are different questions to ask yourself, and that's all part of being an effective business owner. Understanding you're going to resist all this change, right? But to really be effective, you need kind of a checklist to this. So, in a really quick wrap up, so what I'm doing, like I said, not selling anything at all, I'm going to be trying to pull this into a 6-week course where there's 2 weeks spent on each section with workbooks to go through your business, your applications, etc. Right? I would love to, I've got some sheets here. Number one, get some feedback about whether this was useful to you, what was helpful. I'm going to do some more teachings on this, probably emails, etc. If you'd like to hear about that, just put your email down, check this off. And then when I do offer it, which I think will be in January, for the people in this, and I'm not making any commitments because it's not done yet, right? I want this being my home group to be something that's advantageous to people. So I'm going to, whatever it prices at, which will probably be $500, I will sell it for 40% of that, $200 here, and put an hour worth of personal consulting into it to help you with your businesses. So if you're interested in hearing about when I make it available, no commitment. I'm not asking for anything. If it's something that could be useful to you, or somebody it could be useful to, just, fill out a form. But that's it.
So in the interest of being fair to everybody, our jewelry store,
Huh?
if a dude could be buying a ring for a dude,
Mm-hmm.
a girl,
Mhm.
buying another girl. But one of my challenges,
Mhm.
and like you started with it, like everyone has to have what makes me different,
Mhm.
or what makes my business different.
Right.
Well, if I'm selling cheeseburgers,
Mhm.
I think it's hard to find that one thing. Or if I'm
Mhm.
selling a service, I
Mhm.
do it really well. I'm really smart.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everyone else is too. I use video. I use video.
Mhm.
So how do people really? Like, how do you handle it on getting someone to do
That's the
it?
same question when we brought the example of our leadership. What did they do to make themselves different?
Right.
Notoriety.
Well,
They're the only 4 dealers in the country.
so
To a certain degree, aren't they buying? They're buying you, or they're buying.
Right.
If I'm
So-
gonna come to you to learn from you,
Right.
I get to learn that same
But
thing.
you don't know
True.
that until you're actually
You're-
with that person.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
can't do that.
Well, I'd be happy to talk with you in more detail. First of all, if I gave the impression, I didn't mean to say it's one thing, right? It is what differentiates you more broadly, which, and I'll spend another minute on that. So, but to wrap up the other parts of the question. So, for the car dealership, for example, right? They had a real difference. You could eat off their floors. You can't off of most garage floors, right? Their technicians really were level 3 certified. Most aren't, right? But they never said level 3 certified technicians. Only 5% of technicians in the world are certified that way, right? They said, friendly, capable technicians, just like everybody else. So some of it's the wording, right? Some of it also is having the courage to niche down. And niching down, by the way, doesn't have to be, you don't have to only serve one niche. The example I usually use when I teach is restaurants, for example, right? It is pretty hard to conceive of a restaurant trying to be the best romantic getaway in Santa Clarita. That's also the best kids restaurant, right? And a great caterer, right? The messages clash. Not only do they clash, but the things I want to say to a couple looking for a romantic dinner are different than I do to a business person or somebody who's throwing a party, right? So I want to set them up and communicate with them differently. And I'll tell you, am I okay to go on another really short story? Okay, so there was a company in Texas. Also, this is the this was the Yellow Pages days, who did a very similar thing, grew their company tenfold in a year. Full page ad. It was about, they were a moving company, right? And what they did was they educated, which I claim you can do in the jewelry market as well. They educated people, as in they said, you know what? You probably don't know this, but 60% of the people who move stuff in the United States for bonds. We do double background checks. We ain't got none. Your stuff is too valuable to us. Almost everybody sells insurance as dollars per pound, right? And you don't find out about it until your Steinway comes back broken, right? We only do for value insurance, right? So they took it piece by piece and talked about how they were different, and they were really different in those places. And I would imagine the same thing could be true, whether you educate them on the purity of the gold, the quality of the stone, the quality of the artist, right? The support you give them after the sale, whatever it is, and then be that. And it might be a different story, a very different story for couples or gay couples or men buying, or, you know, and I don't know that you can or want to focus on just wedding rings, right? It might, in fact, you might focus on, you know, demonstrations of love post wedding, you know.
I was
But
thinking, the wedding ring is the beginning of your
Mhm.
married 30 years. Right, well, my wife
Mhm.
at least 2 different wedding rings.
Mhm.
And God knows how many other rings that she showed me
Mhm.
for someone.
Mhm.
I need to say.
Mhm.
But you know, it's like when you look at that, it's like we're going to be here for you in 10 years when you need that 10-year ring. We're going to be here for you in 20
Mhm.
years. And we're
The-
going to know you.
Sure. Well, and I'm not sure it's a great translation, but one of the best things I've seen done in the florist industry, for example, right? Florist industry is a really tough business to run effectively. But if you focus on the guy, you know, if I can sell you, look, here's the scoop. You pay me, I don't know what the number is, right? You know, pay me $12 a month, and we're going to make sure, and you don't have to remember, flowers are going out on anniversary, birthday, Valentine's Day, right? Christmas. You get to write all the cards up front, right? We take care of it all, right? And you just have to deal with it once. You don't have to remember, because guys often don't remember, right? You put the whole package together. What kind of packages can you assemble, right, that make it easier in this high change? Nobody's got time anymore. Not to mention, guys not all guys are particularly sensitive, you know, and package it right. I don't know, but that's exactly where the focus needs to be. Because what happens when a jewelry store opens up 5 stores down in the mall and decides to compete just on price if it's price, or they have a higher end designer and they focus that way, you know?
You may not remember this, but you're on this page, you mentioned the book Before the Village. And I didn't have a chance to read it. I don't know if you-
I'm
I know this is.
well, yeah. Well, I talked about Monopolize Your Marketplace, the company in Texas, and they wrote a book called Monopolize Your Marketplace. I remember that one. It's written by Rick Harshaw, and I can't remember the name of his partner. They're really good people. And they themselves, by the way, moved from a marketing training agency into a done-for-you services for contractors, because they sell leads and do digital marketing done-for-you services, because they believe the pure training market's so hard to serve nowadays. Anyway, thank you. If you'd like a sheet, I've got them here.
So just a reminder, we may not next month because I put people on my sheet. So you
I'll
want
pass
to
them
know-
around just in case people
Make
want
sure you sign up before imeetem.com. You can go to scvinternetmarketers.com/imeetem. I have actually on these cards, if I need to use this card, but take you directly there. It's free to sign up, so meetup.com. But that's how I communicate to the group, is through that website. So that'll be it. I don't know, like I said, it's a 50-50 chance whether or not they're going to be. Last year, they said they wanted to keep it empty, and they didn't go. So, the lady said we could. So, I want to make sure that we have a chance. I'm going to ask them to make sure before we say absolutely not. If not, if I don't see you guys next year, Happy New Year, and for sure we'll be back in January, first Tuesday of the month. Thank you
Very
again.
cool. Thanks, guys. Sorry to run so long.